today I wanted to share with you one of the most wonderful things you could ever learn. And that is that you were never born and you will never die. Now think about that for a second. You would probably say to that, how can that possibly be? All around me, I see people being born. Maybe you have children of your own. Maybe they're very young. You can remember their birth, obviously. You see it in your friends and family circles. People are born, they have children. Someone is born, Renil, right there. But you can also say, assuming that you're old enough, although this could happen to people when they're very young, they're confronted by death. The death of their parents, perhaps, or other family members or people they have known closely. So we would say, and they die. So when you say you were never born and you will never die, how does that even make sense? Well, it makes sense because we live in multiple worlds all at once. Because the birth and death are of the physical realm. And that's the most limited aspect of your existence. And yet it is the one where we're most stuck in. That is the most hypnotizing to all of us. We're called upon to overcome that. That is what it means to overcome the realms of Maya. Now really think about it for a second, because if you were never born and you will never die, what exactly are you? You're a soul, you could say. But you could also call it awareness, consciousness, everything that leads you towards the spiritual and non-physical, that is leading you closer to the truth of who you actually are. Right now, it's not so much about physical evolution, what we're dealing with as humans, but rather we're dealing with conscious evolution. We're dealing with spiritual evolution. This is on a whole different level. You don't have to wait until you're physically evolved then to one day realize your unity with God. No, this happens inside of your very self on a soul level. Now, something interesting about all of this is that on a soul level, time doesn't exist. Although one part of you right now thinks it does. And it's that part all ancient texts have tried to convey to humanity. That is an illusion, that is not the truth. Now most of this is lost. Most of these teachings and insights are completely lost in this day and age. That is the sad reality of it all. So we're going to have to figure this out for ourselves by being very aware and awake and willing to travel into our very being. We stop looking at the outside world the way it is, because if we only observe it the way it is, we see all kinds of erroneous things that are not based on eternal truth. The eternal truth about who you really are, what you really are. So when we say someone is never born or never dies, then we must be hinting at the soul or some part that seems to exist within the physical body we temporarily think is us when it is not the real us. Now there's some wisdom right there. In the Upanishads or even in the Bhagavad Gita, they talked about the supreme creative and cognizing spirit, which is God. It is both the causal world and God himself. That is what we talk about when certain elements confront us, physically speaking. But if we understand God without the illusions of the physical or astral worlds, well then we come to the supreme being. Adi Buddha is the basis of physical existence. Adi Deva is the basis of astral existence, and I, the spirit manifested, both macro and microcosmically, am Aji Yagya, Anyakja, meaning not manifest, devoid of form. That is what we really are in essence. If you can sink into that, that is how you reach the state of samadhi, which is total, complete detachment and unity with the formless substance of life. That is why we call it not manifest. How can you experience not being manifested? Well, you do it all the time. Every night you go to sleep, you are essentially going from manifestation into unmanifestation. Your consciousness leaves the body. It's just focused on totally different realms. When you're in those realms without being aware, you just go along with everything that you experience. But by becoming aware of this process, you actually learn more and more about your own immortality. That's what it's all about. Yoga Maya is a term that means the divine illusory power. Now, when you think of yoga, what do you think about? Most people think about being in certain positions, physically speaking, having your body sitting or standing or being in a particular way. That is current day and age yoga, especially in the Western world. But yoga in the ancient world dealt with controlling the mind, being in total peace within your own mind, being in control of yourself, pretty much. So Yoga Maya is the personification of a certain power that would be of a Hindu goddess Devi. Now, when you say Yoga Maya, it's divine illusory power. There's that word Maya again. The physical world is the manifestation of God's energy. Now, Yoga Maya is how God keeps it into place for us to experience. But now we want to escape it. We want to reach unity, understand we are eternal beings. Well, then we have to understand the Yoga Maya aspect of existence. Basically, understand the physical world that you are observing and what it's all about. Now, ahamkara in Sanskrit term is related to the ego and egoism. That is, the identifying with or attachment to one's ego. That's exactly what's stopping you from seeing your eternal nature. The ego sees people being born and die. The ego knows people by their name and bodies. The ego only grasps what is physically in front of it right now. But yet it's the ego that's going to die anyway. It's not the real us. And it's only holding us back. It's keeping us stuck in bondage and incapable of seeing unity when it is there just beneath the surface of your life. In the Gospel of Thomas, which is perhaps a controversial gospel because it was found somewhere in 1945, I think it was in the Nag Hammadi library, if I pronounced that correctly. Perhaps I'm misremembering the name, but you can look this up yourself if you're curious. But in that gospel, Jesus said, when you make the two into one, and when you make the inner as the outer and the upper as the lower, and when you make male and female into a single one, so that the male shall not be male and the female shall not be female, then you will enter the kingdom of eternal life. Really think about what the text actually was suggesting here. When you make the two into one, basically what it all again is hinting at is the letting go of, the releasing of your own egoic mind that keeps you completely hypnotized with the physical world the way it is, and therefore you can't perceive the eternal nature of the very soul that exists within you. That's why in Buddhism and Hinduism they have all these terms for the physical world: Maya, Mara, Samsara. Gnostics would go as far as to say this physical world is satanic. It binds the soul to matter. It is evil of Satan. A monk from India once said, "Why does God not stop suffering if he is all loving?" That is because we turned away from God in consciousness when we came down to this earth. And he is patiently waiting for us to stop being stubborn and turn back to him. And then we can partake in the divine bliss and qualities that lift up the world from its darkness. It will lift up at least your world from the darkness of ignorance. The word ignorance has a certain meaning, not just not knowing, but ignorance. It's like being in ignorance of who you really are, because it exists within you. The gateway to all of eternal and eternal life itself is within you through the very soul that you are, and through the ignorance that we have. We're basically essentially ignoring our own nature due to the egoic mind. Now in 2018, and even creeped me out to be really honest, I would get vivid visions when I was asleep, and these constant hunches inside my consciousness that let me know this physical world is a giant mess. And it seems everyone is either insane or in a deep sleep. I mean, even now you could say that there's a lot of chaos everywhere if you think about it. It's because people don't understand their own eternal nature and the unity we actually share with God. We're all the offspring of the cosmic soul of God. Now a vision came upon me, and walking in a forest with fireflies and other luminous colors. You can't even imagine how magical that forest was, but I was walking there and I felt only pure love through my soul. And then I said, this kind of love doesn't exist on earth. This is beyond humanity itself. And I was told not to be afraid, for if I was not ready to know about this, then I would not have been chosen to witness it. Which is a good sign for me personally, but that is exactly how it's going to be for you as well in your own journey. Because the ancient Bhagavad Gita said spiritual knowledge is only good if it comes from direct experience and perception. No matter how much you hear about these wonderful truths, if you don't have the experience, they are for now mostly meaningless, unless you truly believe and have faith in the people who share this with you. And then, when you die, physically speaking, which again, your soul doesn't die, it's just a body, and you are not your body, so you technically never die, but once it occurs, this physical part, then you may also discover these wonderful truths for yourself if you've been dedicating most of your physical time to learning about this, even if you currently lack the direct spiritual perceptions of these truths, as they happen to me and others through visions, through actual inner experiences within consciousness. Now you walk in a forest on your own, surrounded by love from all angles. In fact, I would describe this feeling as warm. It made me feel safe, to the point you literally know nothing can even hurt me over here. I am safer than safe. On Earth, we can only try and be safe from dangers. Over there, danger does not exist. And hence I saw the white lions rest and look at me, which, when I looked it up, was a symbolism for a spiritual awakening, spiritual majestic power. So I saw the lions rest, and they too did not attack me. They seemed totally relaxed themselves, not really caring, other than looking at me, wondering, can Reneil grasp what he's seeing? Can you grasp what you are seeing? That's how it's gonna go for you during visions of the night, as you're awakening to your own eternal nature. It's the beauty of what is awaiting you once you're ready and willing to go into this direction, to let go of your physical self. I even saw other people during this vision, and they too were minding their own business. And then I saw the most luminous sky, the colors Earth cannot even convey. It was all very vivid and warm and nice. But in Hinduism they would say that is one of those celestial worlds to which you can go when you die. It's those things that perhaps add to my search for God, since the ancients also said, once these visions and insights occur, you can no longer just go along in the normal sense of life, because you have experienced something greater. But that greater part, how elusive it seems, how mysterious it all is. The good news is that you will go there as well. The bad news though is that it can be temporary too, and then we have to leave those beautiful celestial places again, and another birth takes place, to figure out how to reach total unity with God, so we never have to go back and forth between states. There's one thing we shouldn't forget. In those celestial worlds you can also find unity with God, but it heavily depends on whether you can remember to search for God while you're there. And this seems to be somehow connected to whether throughout physical life in general we have dedicated our souls to finding God, because if not, we go along with our overall habitual patterns that we developed before we physically died. So most don't seek God. So when they're dead, they still won't seek Him. But if they did, They could use those other realms to grow closer to God also, and that way is open to you. As the Upanishad stated, remember what you have learned. That would be at the time of death for the truth seeker. Remember, O great one within, do not forget what you have learned about God. So all we can do is seek the truth while alive. And even if we don't grasp it, it is valuable. And then when you die, remember what you learned. Now it does make sense to me, at least by now, because every time you study the truth, if it is the truth, it remains forever so the truth of the immortal nature of your soul, and the unity with God happens every time you die. And then you are reborn, and you seem to have forgotten, but every time a little bit of that knowledge remains, and over many lifetimes they become something big and alive within your very being, where you know, I am one with God. And it's no longer an intellectual thought, but a living reality within your soul, due to all those past lives through which you died and gained insight. It was true until it finally sticks forever. That's what happens. And this leads into this concept of young and old souls. I would say a young soul could very well have been someone that in past lives was perhaps not a human being, and so they don't have a lot of experience yet in how human consciousness works and how to get the best use out of it. An old soul indicates someone that from early on in life seems to somehow have some sort of awareness about how the mind works and how to make effective use of it. Now that is all I would say on the matter for now. Ultimately, you just gotta let this happen to yourself. Let the truth unfold within yourself. Let yourself feel the bliss. Let yourself feel what it would be like now that you know that you're an eternal being. That is absolutely huge and can take away all of your pain and suffering by understanding that one fact about your existence. Allow it to occur. Your ego tries to find answers for everything. It can't grasp how any of this can have occurred. This whole universe, this whole life, everything in it. Like, how does that even occur? It's just giant mystery. Even science can't entirely say it. They will say, well, there must have been a big bang, but nobody really understands how any of it started. But that's God's mystery. That is the mystery of God. Something you don't have to understand in order to feel the bliss. You're just going to have to allow the bliss to flow into you and let go and accept, I don't know the answers to any of that. It's okay, because what it all is about, well, it's about finding your unity. So even though you can't grasp how any of this in your life has occurred, well, if you get stuck on that, it causes a maze in your mind from which you can never escape. But we are also free to simply embrace, I'm a part of God, eternal life. I'm experiencing being alive right now. Isn't that incredible on its own? I have no clue how it all occurred, but it's clear we were meant to rejoice with the spirit of life and partake of the bliss and unity that it has known for eternity. If you wonder when God will give you the visions and experiences of eternity, it happens by God's grace as you reach out to Him. Sometimes you get brief glimpses and you sink back into the old awareness of being a potentially limited human being. What has happened? The mind got hypnotized back into its dreams of Maya. You see? Yes, Maya, the physical world. The manifestation of God's energy is pulling your attention away from God. But you can decide to stop. Either your mind is aimed towards God and the cosmic soul, which reminds you and reveals to you that you were never born and never die. You're an eternal being, or your mind and consciousness is pulled towards physicality with all of its chaos and limitations.